welcome everyone. My name is Grace Ivins and I'm the coordinator for the NSF Secure Spark webinar series. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, AI Analytics and Data-Driven Decision-Making in Research Security. I have a few quick logistics before we begin. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Secure Center YouTube channel. We will have microphones off due to the number of attendees. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. Jeff So will be moderating and will bring questions to our presenter during the Q&A portion and during the webinar as appropriate. Please reserve the chat for comments or technical issues, mostly technical issues. That helps us kind of keep these separate on the operations side. At the end, we ask that you fill out a brief survey, which I'm linking in the chat now. Our webinar series is still fairly new, so we really could use your feedback. We're pleased to have Jeff So, Chief Research Compliance Officer at Northeastern University, moderating today. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our topic and panelists.
Thanks, Grace, and really excited to be a part of this presentation. I am very fortunate to be joined by two great panelists, and we have Alan DePalma from the University of Pittsburgh, where he's the Executive Director of the Office of Research Security and Trade Compliance. He's also the Deputy Director of the NSF Secure Analytics Program. And I'm also here with Deepika Bhatia. She is the Chief Research Security Officer at Emory University, and she is also the Director of the NSF Secure Southeast region. So really fortunate to have two great resources with us today to talk about AI and analytics for smarter research security, an incredibly timely topic. I just wanted to say on a personal note, we're all in a different place in our growth and use of AI in our respective positions. Personally, I've becoming more and more accustomed to using AI in our day-to-day responsibilities. I know it's become an incredible, valuable tool for some simple things like comparing policies or making PowerPoint presentations more aesthetic. Also helping me with research integrity, better understand scientific journal articles that I would have probably have to ask faculty for some help understanding. To have the prospect of applying AI in research security couldn't be more timely. Not only are we trying to comply with regulatory standards, but clearly universities and academics in general are under incredible scrutiny more now than they ever have been. And we have additional responsibilities beyond NSPM 33 that where AI can become very resourceful, whether it's with our helping with our DOE Section 117 reporting, or helping us comply with the anticipated expanded restricted party list from the Bureau of Industry and Security, or putting ourselves in a position to defend ourselves against congressional scrutiny over our perceived international collaborations. I know that's what I'm going to be thinking about when I listen to Alan and Deepika talk is what can we do now to help us start preparing to meet some of these broader concepts that clearly apply to research security itself. So with that, please don't be shy. Put questions into the chat. I'll get to as many as possible, and we're going to try to leave some time at the end to address some questions as well. So Alan, Deepika, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. So we're going to get started with a little bit of an overview of the NSF Secure Center and give you a little bit of a highlight, a spotlight on what we have been working for, who we are, what we are doing, and how it is impacting, hopefully positively, the research community. So, with the NSF Secure Center, if this is your first time interacting with us and connecting with us, well, welcome. The NSF Secure program, where we have the NSF Secure Center as well as Secure Analytics, the main mission is to make research security easier, more streamlined for all of us. Take away the guesswork, all of the mystery, and as Jeff was mentioning, try and help us with tracking and maintaining regulatory updates, as well as ensuring that we are not only aware but can operationalize many of the evolving regulatory changes and the landscape, the federal landscape. And then also be able to cater to the needs of our various research community personnel. So whether it's institutions of higher education, whether it is NPRIs, small and medium businesses, as well as ERIs. Such that there is a practical as well as a scalable research security resource tool set of products that are available, and then also ensuring that we're able to support organizations, whether it's because of limited internal capacity, because research security programs are growing across the country, or because there is a need for cross training between research security folks, research compliance folks, research administrators. So that's essentially in a nutshell what the NSF Secure Center is set up to do. We do have best practices that we have in development, but the ultimate aim is that we have a focus on providing tools, frameworks, as well as workflows that can be utilized as part of your research security program if it is just starting off, or incorporated into your already currently existing research security program at any maturity level that it might be currently at. So here is a quick view of a few buckets of what the Secure Center delivers. And there are a few resources and tools that we're going to be focusing on. But if you go on the securecenter.org website, there are more than a dozen products that you can look at, use, adapt, benchmark, just use as part of your currently evolving research security program. So we have the risk assessment framework and tooling to all the way going down to making sure that you have a structured intake and screening process, but also there are modular solutions. So it's a package of sorts for the various products and resources that are being developed, whether it's the travel center, whether it's a risk assessment program, such that you can use the entire set of resources that's available within the product package, or you can select and use standalone items where you might have some needs for more of those than as compared to some of the other resources. I'm going to turn it over to Alan to walk us through a little bit more about secure analytics.
Thank you, Deepika, and good afternoon, everyone. So as I was preparing for this webinar, as an RSO, Research Security Officer, I've been monitoring what's been happening on the center side and also on the analytics side. And in this point in time, we've come to the point where we are seeing the maturation of some of the tools and products from each group. And when I see this, I get excited because it's like, all right, what can I do with these new tools? What can I do with these new products? How can I put them together to better my work at my institution? And so we're at the point now where we can actually come together and show some of this to you. So this is why I'm excited. So from the secure analytics perspective, our award requires us to do a few things that align with today's topic. The most important thing we're doing is we're creating a tool, which we call Argus. This tool is going to provide research security officers with access to large-scale databases or data sets on publications, patents, watch lists, and international research activities that will enable the RSO to more fully uncover and understand risks within a proposed foreign engagement or collaboration. We're developing this with a few partners, with Texas A&M taking the lead, and my participation through the University of Pittsburgh as deputy director. The first partner that we have here, which is really important, is Finch AI, and that's a company that offers decades of experience in developing and marketing software products to the public and government sectors. Next, we also have partnered with Elsevier, who is a world leader in publication and related metric analytics. And then finally, we have Hoover Institution and their very talented staff who conduct deep research and dig into foreign country-centric data sets. So they specialize in foreign languages like Farsi and Mandarin and can translate these foreign data sets into English for us. The platform itself will utilize artificial intelligence to gather information on individuals and entities to surface risks, along with pattern recognitions. And this is what is exciting to me, because right now, if you're a research security officer, you probably have access to a bunch of different tools that enable you access to different data. And what I'm really excited about with Argus is it's a one-stop shop platform where it will go out and do this for you and bring it back. It will also provide consistency across reviews, leading to what I would call sustainable and supportable data, which we'll get into a little bit in a presentation that can be used as a basis for decision making. So I mentioned how we are building artificial intelligence into the platform. Agentic AI will be heavily leveraged to identify and bring back information on individuals and entities. Now, this information will be used to populate certain screens that we're working on that will provide the RSO or the user with actionable information related to, again, publications, affiliations, and notable higher risk triggers related to the government watch list, and also critical and emerging technologies, which we're also bringing into the screens. And this information comes from various sources, mainly from Elsevier. And we will also be highlighting conclusions in a report form based on the known risk mitigation matrices, which are currently out there and available through federal agencies like NIST, Department of War, NIH, NSF, Department of Energy. We're building those into the platform so as to be available. And through those risk matrices, it will highlight the higher risk triggers for the RSO. So all this information within the system and the platform will be provided back to the RSO and other institutional decision makers, so that it can be considered within an institution's due diligence process framework. And this is, again, where I get kind of excited, because looking at some of the center's products, and specifically Frame, which Deepika will get into it a little bit, this is where, okay, the intersection of both teams come into play. These frameworks are the starting point for the correct use of Argus, and something that, again, the center provides through the Frame products, which I think is the subject of our next slide.
Thank you, Alan. So as we start walking through steps of a research security risk assessment process, so consider this like a pre-introduction to Frame, and echoing Alan's sentiments that it is definitely an exciting time, because when we started about a year and a half ago, there were a lot of challenges that we were looking at, things that we heard from the research community on aspects that are needed but don't currently exist. And one of those items was that there isn't a readily available comprehensive risk assessment tool that we could use as research security officers, which will give us comfort that, okay, I have looked at everything from a regulatory standpoint, I've analyzed my institutional risk appetite, and then I've also used something that I can then repurpose for ensuring that my new staff or junior staff are also able to utilize as onboarding tools. And so as part of the risk intake and pre-assessment tools, there's some of that components, some of those components that are built in. And then there is the framework-based screening questionnaires. And these can be customized based on the type of research you're doing or assessing, the institutional risk, as well as what your overall research portfolio looks like. And so you can add questions, you can select the questions that are already available as part of some of the frames risk triggers, which we'll just get into. And then it also, of course, has some of those topics and spotlighted subject areas where there is more focus at the moment around affiliations, around those disclosure compliance pieces, and then again, making it such that it is the tool is able to be used on a per project context, and then also driven such that it has roles and responsibilities iterated across its use, depending on whether it's a PI that you are reviewing as part of the project, or it's a co-investigator, key personnel, or other similar research roles. So here's a little bit more about FRAME, which stands for Foundation for Risk Assessment, Mitigation, and Escalation. And if you all have looked at the securecenter.org website, FRAME does have an interactive PDF, and that's a good snapshot view of what the tool does. We are updating it in very limited capacity because the main updates, as well as additional triggers or risk categories, are getting added into the shared virtual environment as part of the web app. And so as part of if you're thinking about an asynchronous pre-assessment, so it's a front-end screening tool, and it has a structured mechanism for an intake process, depending on what type of review you're doing, whether it's for proposals, whether it's for manuscript submissions, whether it's an inquiry that comes in from a federal agency, or you're assessing a concern or a question or an allegation that might be coming in as part of a broader research compliance framework. It can be utilized early on in the life cycle, and then, of course, is designed for scalability purposes so that it can meet requirements for institutions of higher ed, SMBs, and then even within IHEs, whether it's an ERI or whether it's an NPRI or an R1 organization. It also can be structured such that it can be utilized for varying staff needs, as well as with bandwidth issues that I think all of us are struggling with, as well as finding challenges and opportunities in our staffing issues where we are growing our program, or we are ensuring that we have newer folks available and able to be a part of our teams.
Deepika, as you've seen, more and more agencies are coming out with their own risk matrices for foreign influence that may require some additional administrative burden or risk mitigation plans and so forth of key personnel on their projects. They're using that matrix as part of their pre-award assessment. And when I heard about the frame tool here, and especially on the front end screening, it sounds like it could be a valuable tool even before the proposal goes into the sponsor to do a self-assessment of any risk before it goes to DARPA or NIH, and I'm sure all of the agencies will have their own at some point. Do you think that's a practical use of frame?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great point and I know we're headed towards the harmonization aspect, but we do have varying and evolving federal regulatory requirements. So frame can definitely be used for agency-specific requirements, as well as for the pre-assessment that you were mentioning. We also have another tool within the Secure Center. It's the Federal Risk Matrix. And that can be combined with frame as your front end to get a more comprehensive, most up-to-date, most recently updated based on regulatory requirements, as well as guidelines and mandates that are coming across. So definitely a good way to ensure that your risk assessment is not only comprehensive, but it meets agency-specific requirements as well.
I can make an aspirational comment, perhaps. Looking at the time that I think central offices are given to submit applications, for instance, sometimes it's difficult to do a lot of upfront screening. And I think from an aspirational standpoint, what we're trying to do, both I think at the center with their tools and also with Argus, is to provide an electronic one-stop shop, even a proposal stage downstream for things like that. And I know our federal agencies have been interested in what we're doing because they see that as a possibility downstream. So I will throw that out there as, hey, something to come to keep your eyes on. I know we're working towards that, but that, again, probably a few years away, but something we're working towards.
Yeah, definitely lots of exciting stuff happening. So here's where it gets even more interesting as we start talking about the interconnectivity and the complement that the center and the analytics program as part of the secure network have. And so where we have the pre-assessment as well as we have the structured data capture, you can have early flags identified. We then need a tool to sort of finish off our entire process. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan to walk us through a little bit more about Argus insights as well as some of the functionalities that are being built in as part of the platform.
All right, thank you. So when we ran a beta test against Argus last year, it was basically a 2-month, it was an 8-week thing. We required all the beta testers to go through mandatory training before given access to the beta test environment. The first part of the training we provided described how the Argus tool must be used in a structured due diligence process so that it is used ethically, legally, and most importantly, effectively. Defined due diligence processes leads to consistent decisions that can be supported through an institution's governance process, which is very important for both senior leaders and faculty groups alike.
Alan, are you suggesting that there's a way that Argus can be misused?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And not just Argus, but really any screening tool. If it's used incorrectly, you could find yourself and your institution in some possible legal issues, especially if it's used to discriminate against certain people groups or individuals. So it's really important to know that Argus and really other screening tools are just that, a tool to be used within an established due diligence process, which is vetted and created such that it complies with all legalities and also internal policies and governance structures.
So if it's the intention of making Argus available to the masses, I'm assuming that there's a associated training, significant training requirement that comes with that access.
That is a good assumption. So when in discussions within our group and the rollout, which I'll describe in a moment, there will be a mandatory training that approved institutions and their RSOs will need to go through before given access to Argus. This was done not only in beta, but it's going to be a licensing requirement right now before an approved institution can access the tool.
Thank you.
So I touched on some of this already, but we're creating the Argus platform from the ground up. And it's being created by research security officers with experience at universities, government agencies, and small businesses. And we're building into the system the risk indicators that federal agencies are requiring when they run the security checks for applications that are chosen for funding. So they are aware of what we're building and have been providing feedback along the way. And in the end, the platform will allow institutions and RSOs to use it as a centralized tool for risk mitigation within various, again, this is the key, within various due diligence processes. And again, Center's frame, that tool contains the necessary information that allows an institution to build various processes to assess, for instance, visiting scholars, foreign subcontracts, consulting agreements, procurement agreements, material transfer agreements. These are just a few of the things that can be used to procure information within a process to evaluate and mitigate risk. Also, Argus can then be used once this occurs, can be used consistently to surface risks for discussion and mitigation, which is, I think, what we're all after here, based upon the direction the federal agencies are going and what they've released and what we've seen in action. We kind of want a better idea of the way that they're being used. And I know that we've seen them being used in various ways, most of them consistently, sometimes not. But having access to the information that will allow us to replicate perhaps what they do within their systems is going to be huge. So this is probably a good slide to describe a bit more about what will be available and when. So release 1 of Argus will be available in July of this year through a controlled release. And it will be made available to a few schools to monitor the product and make any necessary refinements before fully opening the doors. The platform will contain the ability to provide assessments on individuals only as the starting point. It will provide entity resolution, multi-source discovery, including international and non-English sources, structured extraction from the web, CV and bibliometric data, and normalization into a unified scheme. Then the results from this will be compiled within a report-ready output complete with risk mitigation level indicators. As an RSO, having a report in the end that comes back to me with all the information that is procured and puts it in a format that complies with the risk matrices is going to be extremely useful. Also, that information, when used within a due diligence process, again, the frame network is a great place to start. It's going to be extremely powerful for us. Release number
Alan?
2. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, do you anticipate any standardized SOPs to be available for universities to adopt when using Argus?
So standardized SOPs, there's going to be, of course, limits on what and how it can be used, and those will be discussed through the training that's mandatory for the users. A lot of the parameters in the framework is going to be in the licensing terms that will come with the actual tool. Now, as far as anything beyond that, how to use it, this is where, again, this is the intersection and overlap and complementary nature of what Secure Center is creating and how it works with what we're creating.
And there was another question that came in. I think there were some estimates that Argus might be available as early as this February. Is that still on track?
Available as early as this February. So the February, I'm thinking, is February of 2026.
Yes.
We had hoped that that was the case. However, when we looked over exactly what we needed to put in this tool, and at that point, we were still talking to some vendors on some very important integrations with information that they may have. We had to back that up. And right now, that February date is now the July date, so that we have a chance to integrate all of this and to test it. Now, we're not going to be able to test all of it the way we would hope, but to roll it out in a controlled way, we'll be able to monitor it and to fix anything critical in real time.
Have there been any significant barriers in the rollout so far?
Time.
Okay.
Time and features. So as you know, we've gotten a lot of feedback, especially from beta, and a lot of people wanting a lot of things in there, and some of which we'll be able to put in, some of which we will not. But there are some foundational features, a lot of them I've described already, that we have to know will work before we release it on a widespread basis. We're concentrating on those, and we're going to make them available within the individual assessment module, which is going to be available starting in July this year.
Thank you.
So keeping on this theme beyond July of this year, and I said July is going to be when, in a controlled fashion, we will release the first version of Argus. That will be followed up with release number 2, which will be made available in December of 2026. And in that version, we will add the ability to assess organizations, including affiliations, across researchers and funding sources. This will also contain enhanced information. This is important and something that I've been keen on. This will also contain enhanced information to determine beneficial ownerships and relationships that are important for the BIS 50% rule, the related OFAC 50% rule, and the new thing that I think a lot of us have been struggling with, the DOJ bulk sensitive US data rule, which does have a foreign country of concern ownership nexus within it. So we're currently looking at integrating that into that release number 2, which I think is going to be extremely beneficial to RSOs and institutions. Release number 3, there's going to be 4 releases. Release number 3 will be made available in April of 2027 and will include monitoring and alerting. Now, the persistent dynamic monitoring is something that we will offer in this version. A lot of us are probably used to this through current restricted party screening tools that offer dynamic restricted party screenings, things that continually screen every night. This is what we're hoping to put in the 3rd release. And finally, the 4th release will be available in September 2027. This release will offer a team-based operation that enables integration into existing systems. From a systems perspective, I've been involved in a lot of systems integrations. This is something that I'm really, really excited about. If we can integrate this into proposal processing, for instance, and I mentioned this earlier as an aspirational comment, this is something that's going to be extremely beneficial for institutions to know if there are risks going in an application before it gets to the agency, so they can either make plans if they have enough time to alter the application or be prepared for when a possible risk mitigation request comes back.
There's one more question that came in, and I'm not sure if I understand it. Maybe you might.
Sure.
Is this intended to integrate restricted party screening information long term?
The short answer to that is yes. It will have access to the consolidated screening list. It will have access to the 1286 list, the 1260H list. We're working on an integration with a vendor that will give us access to even more lists than that. I'm not totally sure exactly what those lists are, but it will contain access. It will contain screening access to those known lists.
Alan, one more my question is, once Argus is up and running, and let's just fast forward a few years, and it's spreading, its use is spreading as intended, and there's going to be an indefinite, someone's behind the scenes updating and inputting. There's going to have to be some third independent party that's being funded to support and monitor and feed Argus, yes?
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be commercialized. And looking at the partners I mentioned, Finch AI, Elsevier, Hoover, Pitt, and led by Texas A&M, all of us are working towards developing a commercialization plan so that this becomes self-sustainable through a separate entity. So that is our goal, is to make this self-sustaining through the commercialization which we're undergoing right now.
Well, let me know when I can get some stock options.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So a few important points on this slide. The most important one is this: Argus will not make decisions for you. We are training the AI agents to surface information in various formats and report outs to be used by humans in due diligence processes. They will never be used to make decisions on our behalf. Okay. To that end, one key feature that will be available is a discrepancy tab. And when clicked, it will bring to the research security officer's attention any discrepancies the AI agents identified in their searches so that humans can consider how important they are, whether or not they need further research or they're a low enough risk to dismiss. So this is a really important function that we're creating, or developers are creating, to bring to the attention of the RSOs any discrepancies based upon the public information through ScienceCV, through a uploaded biosketch or CV that's provided to Argus, against that which is brought back by the AI agents through public source scraping. And it'll bring that to their attention, and then they can decide, the individuals can decide what to do. And this slide gives a bit more information beyond what I just provided, but that is the main emphasis here, is that AI will do what we tell it to do and what we don't want it to do. I think this might be you, Deepika, to start.
All right. So thank you, Alan. So here's a little bit more about looking forward at how the tools are complementary. They're not overlapping because you're collecting some of the what you want to screen with appropriate documentation, as well as that comprehensive pre-assessment process, and then feeding the information into Argus. And so Frame is one example that we wanted to make sure that we were talking through and making sure that there was the connection between what's happening at the front end. So if it's more of what you're screening and then where you're screening it into, to have that formal assessment as well as the overarching lifecycle management. One of the things that I wanted to also impress on that Alan was mentioning as part of the Argus development. So broadly, as part of the secure program itself, we have an unofficial motto that it's for the research community and by the research community. And so a lot of the Secure Center tools, all of the Secure Center tools, they are developed with co-creation in mind. So feedback focus groups, having co-creation stakeholder activities where there is opportunity. And as Alan was describing, the many functionalities and all of the nuances and exciting stuff that Argus is bringing, I was looking at the participant list, and lots of familiar names as well as faces. So we've been part of many of the CSAs that you've joined us on in creating several of the Secure Center products. And so that's key for us, because these tools, they're not set up just because we want to do a check in the box or we want to have something in place. It's more so that they are functional, and they can be adapted or they can be utilized as part of real-time, real-world research security screenings, as well as issues and challenges and opportunities and all of the many nuances with regulatory requirements that we work through.
And to add to that a little bit, I'm looking right now at the risk assessment summary template that the center has here, and thinking of ways that it can be used with Argus. And when I go through the actual summary template, and I hope all of you have the opportunity to look at it, there are certain topics, and I'll go through some of them, and like education and employment and disclosures. The employment aspect, especially when you're looking at foreign appointments, for instance, that's critical and something that Argus can identify and bring to the attention of the RSOs so you can follow up. Disclosures, we're hoping to get, and I think we are right now in the middle of getting access to ScienceCV, so that we have access to that information to use as a starting point to go out and look for more information. foreign talent recruitment programs. Boy, that's a challenge, right? You don't know if you have one until, in most cases, you look at the actual language in the agreement that's provided in most cases to the faculty member. Publications, collaborations, critical and emerging technologies, funding sources, patents, all of these things are included in the frame risk assessment template here, can be complemented by Argus. So this is a perfect complementary type of thing. I hope you take advantage of looking at the summary template to get an idea of the resources available to you. Whether or not you're a new office or one that's been in existence, can at least perhaps go over them to give you better ideas.
Alan, there's a burning question I think a lot of us have is how much is this that we're all thinking about is how much is this going to cost us? And I know you can't answer that at the moment, but I want to, is there been any discussion as to the affordability of this tool for the broader community?
This is, and it's a burning question, is right. And I'll give you an example. I had to present recently to the United States Government Steering Committee for Secure. And there are probably, at least for me, 5 or 6 questions, over half of them were related to this. How much is this going to cost and how available is it going to be? That is a challenge right now, simply because, number one, we don't know how much it's going to cost because we're still developing it. And then number two, because of the commercialization, which we're required to do under terms and conditions, we don't know what it's going to look like to make this sustainable. However, we are aware that there are desires on the government side to make it as affordable as possible so as to reach each and every institution out there that needs it. So these are ongoing discussions we're having internally and also with NSF to see if we can kind of arrive at a middle ground on that. And again, I don't know what the price is going to be, but those are some of the things we're talking about.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk through a little bit more about the risk signal generation. What creates the necessity for doing the risk assessment and some of the key risk indicators, the FTRP, MFTRP that Alan was mentioning. So there's a lot of information around collaborators as well as affiliations, and I know those are getting formally defined by regulatory agencies as well to help us better understand as well as use those relationships appropriately. And then there's others such as data use, research cybersecurity, insider threat is another big one that we have added in the most recent iteration. And then, of course, ensuring that there is international collaboration that can be continued with informed decision making. And so there's a structured front-end pre-screening approach to ensuring that you realize what are some of the flags as well as indicators as part of the front-end screening that has been done.
Great.
Next slide. All right. So the information that gets generated through this pre-screening process, as Alan and I were discussing a couple of slides ago, so there's what you're screening and then getting some, so if you look at it from a subjective and objective review standpoint, then you feed the information into Argus. So as part of open source checks as well as the RPS pieces that we were talking about. And then the outcomes, they allow you to have that informed risk-based assessment so that there is the next step, right? The life cycle, we're halfway there with talking through, okay, what are some of the categories that we need to look at? What are some of the objective, nuanced findings that we might have when we insert some of the information in Argus? And then what happens after that? So unfortunately, we're not done yet. And so there is the piece about, okay, here are some of our risk areas. And what do you do with those? Do you just allow the activity? What are some of the stipulations if you're allowing it? And sometimes it's easier to mitigate the risk by removing it and just saying no. But a lot of the times, and I think that's the majority of our struggle, is ensuring how do we come to yes. And so there's some of those customizable mitigation strategies. And then who needs to know, just depending on your organization, how decentralized your program might be, how do you define some of these escalation pathways? So who needs to be informed, who is consulted, who is ultimately responsible and accountable. So think of it from an operational standpoint of a RACI at play. So some of the, if you can go back, that same slide. Thank you, Jeff. So some of the upcoming center resources that we are adding on to Frame as so we started with the risk assessment framework, evolved it into Frame as it is currently today, and then we are moving it towards a risk assessment program. And so there's the mitigation and escalation planning, both of which are tools and resources that can be used independently, similar to the summary template. And then there is, of course, the documentation and record keeping that can happen for intake, for the summary template, as well as throughout your risk assessment process. And then all of this right together, it gives you this consistent and sustainable documentation to keep us supporting records for your research security reviews. What we're working towards, just as a teaser, is to have a dashboard type concept. That's number one. So there's a little bit of that AI at play from an administrative burden standpoint and for trend setting and trend recognition. And so you can look at on a quarterly basis or on a semi-annual basis, what are some of your trends and triggers, where some of your risk assessment reviews might be happening, and where you have either pockets within your research organization where there might be certain types of research that might be taking place, and because of which there is enhanced risks or a different type of risk that needs to be managed appropriately, whether it's with education, training, or ensuring that there is regular monitoring that's happening with some of these specific research projects. And then we're also working towards expanding on the bot concept as we're talking about AI here, which won't happen in year 3. It'll be most likely a product for year 4, where we are thinking through reducing the administrative burden for risk assessments so that the documentation piece is sort of auto-filled out and how much of that can be sourced with individual institution-based environments and portals, as well as tools that might be software tools that might be in use already at each of those organizations for risk assessment, as well as for some of the reporting that needs to happen.
Deepika, I've seen the word audit a couple of times. And when we talk about audits, who specifically are we referencing conducting the audits?
Great question. And we actually had a CSA this morning, and we were talking through another new resource around authorships, and this same exact question did come up. So audit multi-use, or rather multi-purpose. One is the internal audit or monitoring for your own program's effectiveness and maturity model assessment. And then the audit is also if there is a question that comes in from a regulatory agency, or there is a concern or an allegation that comes in, if you have risk assessment related documentation available, and say you received this request 2 years, few months even down the line, and you're looking at, oh, there are all of these emails that I have with all of the risk assessment that I did, or I have some pieces that are in a Word document, some in an Excel file, some that are sitting in a tool that I might be using currently. And so it's all fragmented. So the risk assessment frame tool that allows you to have all of your risk assessment documentation in one package, in one hub type of information resource. So that's the other audit readiness functionality that the tool provides.
It's interesting. for either of you, do you foresee someday where there's actually designated federal office, just like we have OHRP for human subjects research, OLAF for animal welfare? We have our single audits every year for our financial audits. Um, do you foresee some type of designated federal agency unit within an agency that has broad oversight over research security? I'm just curious if either of you think that's.
I guess it depends on the administration.
Yeah, true.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I say that in a bit tongue in cheek because what we're seeing right now with the current one. And so honestly, it really does on the goals and the principles that the administration wants to follow. Um, am I opposed to it? No, but at the same time, we need to be careful that the right office is in place that follows these things and applies these things. Do you want Department of Defense doing all of this versus maybe NSF? I mean, there's going to be a difference in approach depending on the agency focus,
Mhm.
whatever agency is tagged with doing that.
Yeah, I second that. I have lots of thoughts and feelings about it. I'm also putting on my research compliance officer hat here. So the accountability aspect, right, which is some of the things that the current administration is ensuring that there is more focus on. I think for some level, right? I think it's also how much of it, because there's a balanced approach with making it too intrusive, having it much more of a policing activity, but also ensuring that there is standardization and consistency across programs. So I think a level of it definitely is, I see that happening in some capacity sooner rather than later. And not, again, right, not opposed to it, but it's a good balance between that freedom at the institutional level plus the government oversight that is needed to ensure that things are moving along as expected.
Thank you.
So, why does this matter for institutions such as the ones that we are all a part of? So, the risk assessment program that we were just talking about, it's a scalable solution for especially if you don't have dedicated research security teams, don't have the research cybersecurity type of subject matter expertise, as well as technical infrastructure that can support a lot of the risk assessment needs, as well as program resources. And then you can always start with the center tool. So it's a good way of benchmarking. One of the common themes and comments that we hear is, the risk assessment tool, especially in its nascent stages as it was a few months ago, our ones already have something like this. And that is a fact, right? Like a lot of us have already been preparing for NSPM 33 for a few years, and we have some of those resources available. But I think one of the things that is helpful is benchmarking, right? Like what do you not have? What can be improved? And I think it's a two-way communication, right? So if you find that your research security risk assessment tool that is in use has a few more items for consideration that Frame doesn't, then please do reach out. Let us know because we want to make sure that the tool can function as comprehensively as possible. And there's always room for ensuring that we can add features as well as questions and additional trigger points for making it a useful resource for our research community. Alan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that from an Argus standpoint, as well as some of our key takeaways.
Let's go down to key takeaways, and maybe we'll have some time for questions if there are any. So, a few high-level takeaways for me. You can go over the slide here, but record keeping is critical. And even, my background, export controls, you have to have a record keeping, and there's a requirement in regulations for that. That will support any audit or any investigation that ensues, and it will, you can support your conclusions. It's very important. That is important. Another thing that Argus is going to do, which I failed to mention, is it's going to be fully transparent. So any results or reports that it generates, it's going to give you the citations of where the source information is procured from. So you'll be able to very easily point to those sources if ever questioned. And then finally, starting with the due diligence process, again, extremely important. But within that process, flexibility is also important. So don't make it so dogmatic that you back yourself into a corner. Make sure you have flexibility within the different process steps so that you can pivot to something else or ask for more information when necessary.
And with that, we've concluded presentation and available for any questions that you might have. And there's some important links on this last page if you guys want to use. And you guys will already have the slides or get the slides right after. All right.
Yep.
Let's see
All the
what's
slides and a link to the video will be given to everyone who registered within about a week.
So one question that came in, can Argus help us assess our own researchers if they are meeting disclosure requirements? Potentially, yes, I think they could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be sure to do that consistently. Make sure you have parameters so that when you do use that for certain researchers, you have a reason to do it, and not just because, they have a last name that might be certain ethnicity, for instance, but make sure you have a reason before you start using that on your own faculty.
Let's see. And just a lot of people thanking both of you for your contributions today. I'll tell you, I was already very impressed with the Secure, what Secure has accomplished in a short period of time. But boy, Alan, you guys, what you guys are potentially putting out there blows me away, and incredibly useful in this new landscape that we're navigating going forward. I will say there are probably some existing commercial products out there that overlap with what Argus is doing currently, and I think a lot of us were looking into that when we didn't know when the effective date of the 50% rule was going to go into effect. Um, Fortunately, we have some time now, and hopefully, we'll be in a position to consider Argus as that tool for a lot of us. So I'm really excited about that prospect, and very grateful to both of your insights, and congratulate both of you on um, all your accomplishments already, and looking forward to what you guys will bring. So thank you all. I'm going to take one more look at the questions to see if there's anything else. And I think we're all set.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Jeff, Alan, and Deepika. That really was wonderful. That was great. I enjoyed it. I know the participants did. Please do fill out our post-event survey. And if you want to connect with the Secure Center, that link is also in the chat. Thank you and have a wonderful day.